back, everyone, to the Association Pod. I'm your host, Aaron, manager of the Jimmy Chitwoods, coming at you again with another great episode on the Association. We got so much to cover on this week's episode. We have the strength of schedule for each team in the league as we finish up the last 5 weeks of the regular season. We're going to see who has the softest strength of schedule remaining and who has the toughest strength of schedule remaining. And of course, we're going to look at the power rankings and see which player was the most impressive player of the week. Everyone strap in. It's going to be a good one for you. I hope you enjoy. This week's episode is sponsored by Mount Matumbo. Mount Matumbo is one of the best mountains in NBA history and a wonderful place to visit for friends, family of all ages. At Mount Matumbo, you can find some amazing sightseeing. You can collect some amazing finger-wagging souvenirs. And most importantly, you can find one of the league's best smiles of all time. Please be sure to check out the Information Center on your next visit to Mount Matumbo. Thank you again to this week's sponsor. Week 12 of the NBA season was definitely one of our more impactful weeks that we've seen, and it definitely had some repercussions on the association and our fantasy basketball league. We finally saw an end to the Trae Young saga as Trae was sent in a deal to the Washington Wizards in exchange for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. This deal is going to have some major impacts on players on multiple teams in the league. For Washington, it's going to be interesting to see how Trae Young fits into the young core that they're building, specifically when we look at some players like Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr, and also looking at the young guards Trey Johnson and Bub Carrington. All of these players are rostered by association teams, so it's going to be interesting to see how the managers adjust to the new dynamic with the new star. On Atlanta's side, there's a little less impact that some of the existing players will have, but it's going to be interesting to see how CJ McCollum specifically fits into the new core that Atlanta is building around Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Alexander Walker. McCollum was playing very well with Washington along with those young players, so it shouldn't be a surprise to see him fit in once he gets up to speed with the new team. On top of the drastic trade that we saw in the NBA, we also saw a lot of turnovers for the league this week. Across the board, on average, we had the highest number of turnovers in the league since week 2 of the NBA season. In the association, the average turnover margin was 89 turnovers across our 12 rosters. There was a lot of carelessness with the ball, but it did lead to some interesting numbers in the steals category, as we saw that category across the league average jump up by about 5 steals per team. We've covered some of the key storylines of week 12. Let's jump right into the power rankings, starting off with the team in the 12th spot, Cat. Jordan's team takes a bit of a drop in the power rankings this week after they finished 9th in 2 weeks consecutively. Some of the key stats that led to their fall in the rankings is finishing 12th in three-pointers and 12th in steals. They also finished 11th in rebounds and 11th in blocks this week. Jordan's team did finish 2nd in field goal percentage and was tied for 3rd in turnovers, one of our better turnover teams in this week with that increased number. Those categories, however, were not enough to keep them from dropping into the bottom spot. The most impactful player for Cat this week was Jaren Jackson Jr. Triple J had a nice showing this week as he put up 77 points, 25 rebounds, and also contributed 8 blocks to the squad this week. Those 8 blocks were the second most of any player nominated this week. Despite the nice performance out of Jaren Jackson, it was not enough to keep Cat out of the 12th spot. Coming up next in the power rankings, in the 11th spot, is a big lump with Knobs. Chris was able to make a 1-spot jump in the power rankings this week, thanks to some improvements in some of the categories. After having 5 of the 9 stat categories be 11th or 12th last week, the team was able to improve on one of those and only have 4 categories be 12th or 11th this week. They also were highlighted by a 4th place finish in free throw percentage, a 5th place finish in rebounds, and a 5th place finish in turnovers. The best performer coming from a big lump with Knobs was Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Alexander Walker put up 77 points this week, along with 21 rebounds and 15 assists. He was able to make 10 three-pointers and had 8 steals this week, second most of any nominee. Alexander Walker is going to be one of those players with an opportunity to step up on the Atlanta Hawks because of the Trae Young deal, and that's something Chris would definitely love to see, so he could possibly move up out of the 11th spot. Our next team we're looking at in the power rankings is Captain's Carnival. Taylor's team comes once again into the 10th spot of the power rankings. Captain's Carnival continues to show some good improvements in the stat categories this week, as they're able to not have any category finish in the 12th spot for the first time since week 8. Still keeping them down in the rankings a little bit is an 11th place finish in free throw percentage, 10th in points and rebounds, and being 9th or tied for 9th in field goal percentage, 3-pointers made, assists, and steals. Taylor is able to hold the best turnover number in the league this week, as they finished with only 48. A player that helped contribute very strongly for his team and keeping that turnover number low is Julian Champagnie. Champagnie was able to put up 60 points this week, as well as snagging 40 rebounds, the most of any nominee this week. He was able to knock down 10 3-pointers and contribute 9 assists, and he only had 5 turnovers, helping contribute to that very low number. Champagnie is an impressive young player performing very well for San Antonio right now, and is somebody that Taylor would love to see take a step up for him and potentially help him step up into the power rankings higher. Next up in the 9th spot is going to be Malik's Monastery. Unfortunately for Thomas, he is not going to repeat on his pattern of alternating between the 1st and 6th spot, as we find him in his lowest rank since week 6. The team finished 10th in 3-pointers made, 10th in assists, and tied for 9th in steals. With only 2 categories finishing in the top 3 of any rank, being tied for 3rd in blocks and tied for 3rd in turnovers. These stats are the reasons why Malik's Monastery takes a big drop in the power rankings this week. Player that has continued to impress for Malik's Monastery is Kawhi Leonard. Leonard is playing some great basketball right now and was highlighted this week by filling the stat categories with 101 points, 28 rebounds, 15 assists, and he was able to snag 11 steals this week, tied most of any player nominated for Most Impressive Player of the Week. Thomas is definitely hoping that Kawhi Leonard can do more than just turning around the ship for the Clippers and can help turn around his ship in the power rankings moving forward. In the 8th spot, we're going to find Benny's Bistro. Benny is able to put up his best finish in the power rankings since week 8 when he was in this same spot. Benny is able to put up his best finish in the power rankings since week 7 where he finished in this same spot, 8th of the power rankings. Despite finishing 12th in points and rebounds and 11th in assists, Benny's Bistro was able to be the best team from the free throw line, have the 2nd best turnover number, and also be 3rd best from the field for field goal percentage. They also were able to snag the 4th most steals this week. All of these stats help bring the move up the power rankings for Benny's team. A player that's been very impressive for Benny's Bistro and quite a surprise on the season is Royce O'Neal. Royce was able to put up 58 points this week with 18 threes knocked down, as well as 25 rebounds, 12 assists, and 6 steals. The 18 3-pointers made from Royce were tied most of any player nominated this week. The Phoenix Suns have been quite a surprise in the Western Conference, and Royce O'Neal is a nice surprise as well that Benny Bistro is glad to have on his team, moving him up into the 8th spot of the power rankings. The next team we take a look at in the 7th spot will be the Heatles. John Frank's team had a similar performance to last week, but unfortunately dropped in a couple of categories, bringing him down from the 5th spot into the 7th spot. The 2 categories most responsible for the drop is going to be steals and blocks, as John Frank finished 11th and 12th in those 2 categories respectively. The Heatles were the 3rd best team from the free throw line and also tied for 4th from the field and field goal percentage as well, but those were not enough to keep the team from dropping. The best player coming off of the Heatles this week was Jalen Brunson. Brunson was able to put up a nice showing in multiple stat categories as he put up 104 points. He was able to knock down 14 3-pointers, add 15 rebounds, and 20 assists. The 20 assists from Brunson were tied for 2nd most of any player nominated this week. Despite Jalen Brunson's impressive performance, just like how the Knicks have struggled in the last couple of games, it was a bit of a struggle for John Frank and the Heatles as they dropped to 7th. Next up in the power rankings, we find Harry the Hawk in the 6th spot. Kenny's team was able to have some impressive numbers in multiple stats this week as they finished 2nd in 3-pointers made, 2nd in assists, and also tied for 2nd in steals. The team struggled in field goal percentage and blocks, however, this week, finishing 11th and 10th in those 2 categories respectively. The balancing out of these stat categories is why Harry the Hawk continues to be one of our teams hovering around the middle of the power rankings again. A player to highlight for Harry the Hawk this week and their most impressive player of the week nominee is Donte DiVincenzo. Donte has been a surprising contributor for Harry the Hawk and been very impressive, putting up double digits in 4 stat categories this week. He had 68 points, 18 rebounds, and 19 assists, including making 18 three-pointers, tied with Royce O'Neal for the most this week of any nominee. Donte was also able to snag 6 steals for Harry the Hawk squad. The way Donte DiVincenzo was able to put up some good numbers in multiple stat categories helped contribute to some of the impressive numbers out of Harry the Hawk coming into the 6th spot. In the 5th spot, tied for our highest riser of the week, we find the Underdogs. Ryan S. was able to be one of our most impressive bounce-back performances this week, as he was able to make a jump out of the 8th spot into the 5th spot. After having 4 stat categories be in the bottom 3rd rank last week, the Underdogs only had 1 category being in that section, with the free throw percentage being 12th. The Underdogs were the best team from the field goal percentage, and then after that, they had every stat category be somewhere between 5th or 7th, being one of the most consistent performers of any team this week. A player that contributed very nicely for the Underdogs was Keldon Johnson. Johnson had 73 points and 23 rebounds this week, as well as knocking down 9 three-pointers and shooting just under 58% from the field. Keldon Johnson's been one of the impressive wing players for the San Antonio Spurs, just like Julian Champagnie that we saw earlier in the Player of the Week nominees. And Ryan S., I'm sure, is likely to hope that Keldon Johnson continues to perform well the rest of the way. Next up, we find the Jimmy Chitwoods in the 4th spot. My team takes a drop from the 2nd spot in last week's rankings due to a couple of poor performances in a few categories. Most notably, the Jimmy Chitwoods finished 10th in field goal percentage and 9th in turnovers. After having 2 weeks in a row with 2 first-place finishes in categories, the Jimmy Chitwoods had no categories where they ranked first and was only able to get a 2nd-place finish out of free throw percentage as their best category. Alex Sarr was able to be the most impressive player of the week for the Jimmy Chitwoods, as he had 71 points, grabbed 30 rebounds, and rejected 10 shots away, with those 10 blocks being the most of any player nominated this week. Alex Sarr continues to show that he is one of the most impressive young players from that 2024 draft. It'll be interesting to see how the appearance of Trae Young on Washington will affect Alex Sarr's performance moving forward, and how it affects the Jimmy Chitwoods in the power rankings as well, being our 4th-place finisher of the week. Next up, one of our most consistent finishers in the power rankings. And third, we find the Infirmary. Ryan W.'s team continues to be one of the most impressive teams we see at being able to finish consistently in the top 3rd of the power rankings. This is now their 6th straight appearance in 3rd or 4th of the power rankings. Ryan's team was actually the worst turnover team this week, as they put up 118 turnovers, the 2nd most we've seen out of any performance this season. Ryan is able to stave off a drop in the power rankings due to those turnovers by being the 2nd best rebounding team and having the 2nd most blocks of any team this week. The best player coming off of the Infirmary this week is the newly acquired Stephen Curry. Steph Curry was able to put up 116 points and able to knock down 16 threes, the 2nd most of any player nominated. Curry also dished out 28 assists, which is the most that any player nominated this week was able to contribute to their team. Curry is already making an impact on the Infirmary since the deal they made to acquire him, and Ryan is definitely hoping that he can get more out of Steph Curry and get him moving up past 3rd in the power rankings. In 2nd of the power rankings, this week we find aspirations of a title. Tim is able to stay in the top 3 of the power rankings, thanks again to some really strong performances in rebounds and assists. For the 2nd straight week, aspirations of a title finishes 1st in both of those stat categories. Tim's team was also to have the 2nd most points this week, as well as 4th in three-pointers made, and tied for 4th in field goal percentage. They continue to struggle a little bit in the turnovers, as they had the 2nd most turnovers this week. If Tim's team can control those turnovers a little bit more, we definitely could see them usurping our top spot in the power rankings. The best performance for aspirations of a title this week is Victor Wembanyama. Victor, despite coming off the bench for a couple of games this week, was still able to fill the stat categories very nicely. He contributed 96 points, 32 rebounds, the 2nd most of any player nominated this week, He was also able to get 6 steals and 8 blocks. The 8 blocks were the second most of any player nominated this week. If Victor can continue to stay healthy for the San Antonio Spurs and for Tim, we could definitely see both the Spurs and aspirations of a title making a run in this NBA season. Finally, looking at our top team in the power rankings, we find Wiggins of Nas. Nate is able to finish in the top spot for the second straight week of the power rankings. This top place finish is contributed mostly to being the best team from the three-point line, having the most points, also being able to have the most blocks and the most steals. A player that contributed specifically in all 4 of those categories very nicely for Nate was Tyrese Maxey. Maxey was able to have 117 points, including knocking down 13 threes. He was also able to have 20 assists and grab 11 steals and reject 5 shots this week. The 11 steals were tied for the most of any nominee this week. Tyrese Maxey is continuing to help the Philadelphia 76ers be one of the most surprising teams in the Eastern Conference, although it's no surprise to see him galvanizing Wiggins of Nas to the top spot for the second straight week. Now that we've completed the power rankings analysis, it's time once again for the most impressive Player of the Week awards. Coming in with a bronze medal for Week 12, we're going to find Dante DiVincenzo. Dante being able to knock down the most three-pointers this week and able to dish out some nice assist totals is why he's able to receive the bronze medal for Harry the Hawk. The silver medal for Week 12 is going to go to Stephen Curry. The nice performances in points, threes, and assists from Steph Curry is why he's going to receive the second place finish for Most Impressive Player of the Week. And the gold medal for the Week 12 Most Impressive Player of the Week goes to none other than Tyrese Maxey. After missing out on the podium in Week 11, Tyrese Maxey comes back in Week 12 and is able to snag the podium and win that gold medal for Wiggins of Nas. Now that we've covered the Week 12 power rankings, it's time to dive in to the remaining strength of schedule for the rest of the season. We have 5 weeks left until the playoffs begin in the association, and I thought it'd be a great time to take a look to see which teams have the easiest strength of schedule remaining and which teams are going to have a tough sledding ahead of them. The way we're going to look to see which teams have the easiest and softest strength of schedule remaining is by looking at their opponents in the remaining weeks and compiling the average of those 5 opponents and seeing who has the lowest average for their opponents and which team is going to have the highest average of their next opponents. Kicking it off, looking at who's going to have the easiest remaining strength of schedule, we start off with aspirations of a title. Tim already being able to benefit by the 4th easiest strength of schedule so far in the season. Tim is going to continue to benefit by having the easiest schedule left. Tim is battling for a first round bye in the championship bracket this year, so having this inside route is definitely going to be a nice boost for him trying to acquire that first round bye and a ticket straight to the semifinals. A team looking to have another easy stretch as they finish the season is going to be the Jimmy Chitwoods. The Jimmy Chitwoods has faced the 6th toughest strength of schedule so far in the season, and they're going to have a little bit of an easier stretch as they round out the season. The Chitwoods look like they're going to be unable to snag a first place bye based on the standings right now, as they stand 4th in the win-loss tie total. The easy strength of schedule could give them an opportunity to slide into a first round bye, but we'll have to see how it shakes out, as you never know what kind of performance their opponents might have. The team with the 3rd easiest strength of schedule is Harry the Hawk. Kenny right now sits in 9th in the standings and is 12.5 games out of the playoff picture. If Kenny is able to take advantage of this 3rd easiest strength of schedule, there's a possibility we could see Harry the Hawk sneaking their way into the championship bracket. Next up, we're going to take a look at the 3 toughest remaining schedules for the rest of the season so far. Starting off with the 3rd toughest schedule remaining, the Infirmary. Ryan W. is currently 2 games back out of a first round bye in the win-loss standings if the season was to end today. And unfortunately, he is going to face some tougher opponents as he tries to vie his way for a first round bye. We'll see if the Infirmary can get that ticket to the semifinals and be able to skip the quarterfinals of the championship bracket. The team facing the 2nd toughest strength of schedule is going to be Captain's Carnival. Taylor has already faced a tough season of opponents so far, as through the first 12 weeks, they've faced the 2nd toughest strength of schedule already. As it stands currently in the win-loss totals, Captain's Carnival is 21.5 games out of the championship bracket, but they are only 11.5 out of a first round bye in the consolation bracket. A good finish against this tough schedule could give Captain's Carnival an easier route to winning the consolation bracket and having the best odds in the lottery. Finally, we take a look at the team with the toughest remaining strength of schedule, that team being the underdogs. It's quite the coincidence that our team that is named as not the favorite is going to be facing some tough opponents to end the season. Ryan S. currently sits 14 games out of the championship bracket, but he does only sit 3 games out of a bye in the consolation bracket. If we could see Ryan S. overcome these tough opponents and find some good finishes in the win-loss category, he could secure his ticket into a first-round bye in the consolation bracket and have a great chance of winning the best lottery odds in the draft next year. Thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of the Association Pod. Just some scheduling announcements and some information about what's going to come next week. I will be out on some vacation starting on Thursday of this week and be gone through the beginning of next week. The episode for week 13 will not include a power rankings analysis, but I am going to pre-record some great segments for your listening enjoyment. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I look forward to seeing you guys live with some power rankings analysis back in week 14. Everyone, good luck in your matchups for week 13. God bless, and we'll see you next time.